Today, we're diving into the fascinating realm of psychology, exploring one of the most primal emotions known to humankind: fear. Have you ever wondered why certain things terrify us while others don't even elicit a flinch? Join me as we unravel the mysteries behind our deepest fears. Fear is a complex emotion deeply ingrained in our evolutionary history. From the fear of predators in ancient times to modern-day anxieties, our responses to fear have shaped our behavior in profound ways. One of the most common fears, known as Ophidiophobia, is the fear of snakes. But why are so many people terrified of these seemingly harmless creatures? I know I am afraid of them. I never liked snakes because of their squirmy bodies. Psychologists believe that our fear of snakes may be linked to evolutionary factors. Throughout history, encounters with venomous snakes posed a significant threat to human survival. As a result, our brains have become wired to detect and respond to snakes with heightened fear. When we encounter something we perceive as threatening, such as a snake, our brains activate the amygdala, the region responsible for processing emotions, including fear. This triggers a cascade of physiological responses, such as increased heart rate and heightened senses, preparing us to either fight or flee from the perceived danger. But fear isn't always rational. Sometimes we're terrified of things that pose little to no real threat. Take the fear of public speaking, for example. Glossophobia, or the fear of public speaking, affects millions of people worldwide. Despite the absence of physical danger, the thought of speaking in front of an audience can evoke intense fear and anxiety. Psychologists believe that the fear of public speaking stems from a fear of judgment and rejection. Our innate desire for acceptance and approval makes the prospect of being scrutinized by others particularly daunting. Another common fear is the fear of the unknown, often exemplified by our fascination with horror movies and haunted houses. But why do we willingly subject ourselves to experiences that terrify us? Some psychologists suggest that exposure to controlled doses of fear-inducing stimuli, such as scary movies, can help desensitize us to fear in real-life situations. It's a phenomenon known as exposure therapy, where gradual exposure to feared objects or situations can reduce anxiety over time. For me, this exposure therapy has not worked, but I have always enjoyed horror movies and haunted houses. When it comes to horror movies, you are just waiting for something to happen, whether it is a jump scare or the best friend being the killer. I would love to know what you fear. Let me know in the comments. The above were just some examples of what we fear, but I want to focus on the unknown. There are many things that fit into this category, such as death, life after death, and ghosts. Let's start with death. We all know someone who has died. If they were sick with a terminal disease, we saw them go through the stages of death. We watched them suffer. If they were killed in an accident, the death was probably quick, and hopefully they didn't feel pain. What is it about death that makes us fear it? According to Psychology Today, studies have shown that children develop views on death based on how it is presented to them. If death is presented as resulting from a cessation of biological function, young children are more apt to think of death in biological terms than when death is explained in an afterlife context. For example, your grandmother is now with God. However, as they age, children and adults often adopt two parallel stances about death involving a biological and an afterlife or religious stance. I do agree with this statement. I have watched my father go through the stages of dying. I saw the cessation of biological function, and both he and I believe in God, so I hope that is where he is at now. Watching him go through the dying process was not comforting to me. He was bedridden, had to be bathed, and near the end needed help with feeding until he finally lost all interest in everything. It was like he just laid there waiting to go. He died March 29th, 2020, in his sleep. But what do we go through when we are dying? What is the process like for us? I try not to think about this too much because we all have a day and time. If you knew what the process was like, though, would you feel better? Would you want to know when your time is up or how you would die? I do not want to know my time or how I would go, but the process I would, just to make it more comforting. Do yourself a favor and go to Google. You can easily search for stages of death. You can talk to a hospice nurse and ask them about it. Watch YouTube videos on this topic. If this is a fear of yours, do research to help overcome it. This brings me to the next topic of life after death. What happens to us after we die? I know we all have our own beliefs, but I would like to think there is a heaven waiting for us. Some people think when we die, that is it, just darkness. Maybe that is true. There are so many people who claim to have had near-death experiences and claim to have talked to angels or God himself, or they have seen ghosts. All these claims make me wonder, are they telling the truth? I have never had this experience, but after my father died, my mother would say she heard him calling out her name when she would be sitting at home. She would not be dreaming. She was awake. She would look around and say, "Rich, is that you?" It has happened a few times. My cousin had a dream about him sitting in a chair. He looked healthy and happy and was talking about dogs. After my grandmother died in 2010, I asked her to come in my dream and let me know she's okay. Within days, I had a dream about her sitting down like she was facing a camera, talking to me. Sure, these could just be dreams or our imagination, but what if they were not? Go on YouTube, search for life after death. You will find so many videos of people saying they almost died and saw loved ones. I have watched these videos out of curiosity, and many of the people seem genuine, and I am sure others jump on the bandwagon to get in a video. Google will also give you tons of articles on this topic. Could there be life waiting for us after we die? According to Gallup International, of the respondents that they polled around the world, 57% think that there is a life after death. 1 in 4, or 23%, do not believe that anything happens when we die. 15% cannot say. Would you feel better knowing there is life after death? Would you be less afraid to die? I think I would if I knew for sure I would be going somewhere after death. Somewhere nice and peaceful, of course. Speaking of life after death, what about ghosts? Do you fear them? Do you believe in them? I'm not sure I fear them, but I do believe in them. Over the years, we have had experiences in our homes with seeing shadows. My husband has been touched a few times, and when he would look to see who it was, nobody was there. I have even seen a cat's shadow walking past my kitchen. If you fear them, why? Because you cannot see them? That is understandable. Imagine seeing a shadow or hearing whispering in your home and nobody is there. One reason we fear ghosts is that we have been conditioned to do so by popular culture. Books, movies, and television shows portray ghosts as evil, capable of mischief, injury, and even death. After watching a scary movie, you now think you hear noises coming from the basement. You are afraid to go to bed, especially in the dark. Maybe you hear noises in the kitchen. Have you laid in bed needing to go to the bathroom but refused out of fear, so you suffer? Another reason can be genetics. If you have a close family member with a phobia or another type of anxiety disorder, then you are more likely to develop a phobia. Stress and social influences can play a part too. Someone who has had a frightening experience involving ghosts or haunted houses might be more likely to develop this type of fear. There are also scientific reasons why we think we see or fear ghosts. When we are in a dark or unfamiliar place, our brains may try to make sense of the shadows, noises, or shapes that we see or hear. If we are already anxious or expecting something scary, our brains may interpret these stimuli as signs of a ghostly presence. This is called pareidolia, which is the tendency to see patterns or faces in random objects. Another example is when we feel a sudden chill, a touch, or pressure on our body. This could be caused by changes in temperature, air currents, muscle spasms, or clothing. However, if we are afraid or suggestible, we may attribute these sensations to a ghost trying to communicate with us. This is called somatic perception, which is the awareness of our own body. A third example is when we hear voices or sounds that seem to come from nowhere. This could be due to auditory hallucinations, which are false perceptions of sound that occur in the absence of external stimuli. Auditory hallucinations can be triggered by stress, sleep deprivation, drugs, mental disorders, or brain damage. They can also be influenced by infrasound, which is sound at levels so low that humans can't hear it, but can still affect our mood and perception. How do you overcome the fear of ghosts? If you really have a fear of ghosts, speak to a counselor about it. They can help you cope with it. Practice relaxation techniques to help you calm down. Find hobbies or sports that can be a positive outlet for your emotions. Stop watching scary movies. Don't go into scary attractions. Just stay away from the influences. In the end, we all have fears. They came from somewhere. I have several fears, and I also have anxiety, so I'm sure that does not help. So, whether it's a fear of spiders, making speeches, or death, remember that fear is a natural and adaptive response designed to keep us safe. By understanding the psychology behind our fears, we can learn to manage and overcome them, ultimately empowering ourselves to live more fulfilling lives. So tell me, what is your biggest fear? I will list mine in the comments.